My mother used to say grace before every family dinner. She'd bow her head, fold her hands, and thank God for her children singular. As in one. As in my brother, Daniel. I sat across the table every single time, and watched her do it. I was 26 the night I finally understood she didn't consider me a mistake. That would have required her to think about me at all. My name is Claire. I'm the older one by 4 years, though you'd never know it from the way my family operated. In our house, Daniel was the son. Everything else orbited around him. My parents built their social identity on his achievements the way other people build vacation homes carefully, expensively, and with zero intention of letting anyone else stay there. Daniel was smart. I won't pretend he wasn't. He graduated top of his class at Georgetown, got recruited straight into a consulting firm in Chicago, made senior associate by 25. My parents kept a framed photo of him shaking hands with someone important at some event on the mantel in the living room. I don't know who the man was. I don't think my parents did either. It just looked impressive. I became a writer. Not a blogger. Not someone who posts captions and calls it content. I wrote literary fiction. My first novel came out when I was 24, published by a mid-size independent press in New York. It did quietly well. Not bestseller list well. Not movie deal well. Enough that my editor called me on a Tuesday afternoon and told me she cried at the ending, and I sat in my car in a parking garage in Brooklyn and cried too, for a different reason. My parents did not read it. My mother asked me once, early on, if I was going to write something useful, a self-help book, maybe, or a memoir about our family. When I told her it was literary fiction, she nodded the way people nod when they're waiting for you to finish talking. My father asked if it was on Amazon. I said yes. He said he'd look it up. He never did. I stopped bringing it up after that. The thing about being invisible in your own family is that it doesn't happen all at once. Nobody sits you down and says, "We've decided you don't count." It's 1,000 small decisions over 20 years. It's being asked to take the photo instead of being in it. It's holiday cards that feature Daniel's new apartment, but not your book release. It's your mother calling you to ask if you think Daniel would prefer Barcelona or Lisbon for his birthday trip, and it doesn't occur to either of you, in the moment, that she's never asked you where you wanted to go. You absorb it. You normalize it. And then one day, you're sitting in your childhood bedroom during Thanksgiving weekend, listening to your father give a toast at the dinner table about what a remarkable young man his son has become, and you realize you're holding your breath, not because it hurts. It's past hurting. Because you're waiting to see if your name comes up at all. It didn't. It hadn't in years. Daniel got engaged in October. Her name was Sophie. I'd met her twice before, once at a birthday dinner for my father, once at a random Sunday lunch. My mother organized with 3 days' notice, which she texted only to Daniel, and then acted surprised when I found out through him. Sophie was sharp, warm, the kind of person who asks follow-up questions and actually listens to the answer. I liked her immediately, which made me nervous, because the people I liked had a way of getting absorbed into my family's gravitational field and slowly losing the ability to see me clearly. The engagement party was set for a Saturday in December. My mother called me on a Wednesday to tell me about it 3 days before, and in the same breath, told me the dress code was cocktail attire. "Is there anything I can do to help?" I asked. "Oh, we have everything handled," she said. "Your father hired someone." "Okay. Do you need me to bring anything?" There was a pause. "Just yourself," she said, and I could hear in her voice that even that felt optional. The party was at my parents' house, the big one in Naperville they'd bought when Daniel got his first promotion, as if his success had entitled them to more square footage. They'd rented round tables and strung lights through the backyard and hired a caterer. When I arrived, 40 minutes before the start time, because I'd always been the kind of person who shows up early and stands around being helpful, my mother was in the kitchen, talking to the event coordinator. She looked up when I walked in. "Oh, Claire," she said. "You can set your coat in the den. Second door on the left." I knew where the den was. I'd grown up in this house. I set my coat down and came back to ask again if she needed anything. She was already gone. I found my aunt near the drink station and stayed close to her for the first hour. My aunt, my mother's sister, was one of the few people in my family who had read my book. She'd sent me a handwritten card when it came out. 3 paragraphs. Specific. I still had it. She asked how the second one was coming, and I told her slowly, which was true, and she said the best ones always came slowly, which I didn't know if she believed or was just saying, but I appreciated it either way. Guests arrived in waves. Friends of my parents, colleagues of my father's, people from the neighborhood. A cluster of Daniel's friends from college, who all looked exactly like Daniel, confident, at ease, wearing clothes that fit correctly. I circulated. I smiled. I congratulated my brother, who hugged me, and said it was good to see me with the particular warmth of someone who means it but doesn't have a lot of time right now. I shook hands with Sophie, who pulled me into a hug instead, and said she was glad I was there, and I believed her. I was seated at a table near the edge of the backyard, close to where the catering staff was moving in and out. Not the worst table, but not a table anyone had put thought into. My place card was between a retired couple who were friends of my parents from their country club, and a woman named Patrice who worked with my father and spent most of the dinner on her phone. Ayate. I listened. I laughed at things that were funny and smiled at things that weren't. I was 30 years old, and I was very good at this by now. At one point during dinner, my father stood to give a toast. He talked about Daniel for 4 minutes. I counted. He talked about watching Daniel grow into a man of integrity and vision. He talked about how proud he was. He said Sophie was gaining not just a husband but a family, and he opened his arms wide when he said it, like he was describing something boundless. He did not mention me. I looked at my glass of water. I breathed in. I breathed out. My mother leaned over to the woman next to her, one table away, and I heard her say, in a voice she didn't bother to lower, that Sophie was exactly the kind of woman she'd always hoped Daniel would find. Someone with substance, she said. Someone who actually contributes something to the world. I don't know if she meant for me to hear it. I don't know which answer is worse. After dinner, the caterers cleared plates and someone put music on and people moved into smaller groups. I stood near the edge of the yard for a while, watching my brother laugh at something his college friend said, watching my father clap a man on the shoulder, watching my mother beam. I was about to find my aunt and say goodnight when Sophie appeared at my elbow. "Can I steal you for a second?" she said. I followed her inside, through the kitchen, into the small sitting room, just off the hallway, where my grandmother's old writing desk still lived. Sophie closed the door behind us, which I thought was strange, and then turned around with an expression I didn't know how to read. "Okay," she said. "I have to ask you something and I want you to know it's not weird. I just need to confirm it because I've been standing here all night, not saying anything, and I can't not say it anymore." "Okay," I said. "Are you Claire Alderman?" she asked. "The Claire Alderman who wrote Still Water?" The room didn't move, but something in me did. "Yes," I said. Sophie put both hands over her mouth. I had published Still Water, under my full name, Claire Alderman. My family knew me as Claire Whitmore, my married name, which I'd taken for 2 years before my divorce, and kept because changing it back felt like too much paperwork and too much explanation. My parents had never connected the two. They'd never tried. "I read that book 4 times, Sophie said. Her voice cracked slightly on the 4. "The first time I read it, I was on a train from New York to Boston, and I missed my stop. I was so embarrassed. I couldn't put it down. I recommended it to every single person I know. I made my entire book club read it. My best friend and I still talk about the ending. We quoted it at each other for months. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what my face was doing." "I had no idea," she said. "Daniel never said I don't think he knows. Does he know?" "I don't think so," I said. Sophie looked at me for a long moment. Then she opened the door. I don't know exactly what I expected. I think I expected her to tell me quietly, personally, and leave it at that. I think I expected to feel seen for a moment, and then go home, and go to bed, and carry it privately, the way I carried most things. That is not what happened. Sophie walked back into the gathering with a kind of purposeful energy that parted the crowd slightly. She found Daniel first, touched his arm, said something in his ear. Daniel looked at her, then at me, with an expression that shifted in real time. Then Sophie walked to where my parents were standing with two other couples and said, clearly enough for the people nearby to hear, I have to tell you something incredible that I just found out. I stood in the doorway. My mother turned toward her with the gracious, attentive look she used for guests. Your daughter, Sophie said, is Claire Alderman. She wrote, Still Water. She paused. Do you know what that book is? It was on the New York Times extended list. It won the Pushcart Prize. It's been taught in universities. I just found out tonight that the woman who wrote the book I've been talking about for 3 years is standing in your backyard, and nobody mentioned it. The two couples my parents were standing with turned to look at me. My father's expression didn't change for a full second. Then it did. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. She never told us, my mother said finally. Sophie looked at her. Did you ask? There was a silence that lasted longer than any silence I had experienced in that house. Daniel crossed the backyard to where I was standing. He looked at me with something I had not seen from him in a long time. Not guilt exactly, but the thing that lives next to guilt. The thing that comes before the apology you haven't figured out how to give yet. I didn't know, he said. I know, I said. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at him. My brother, who had gotten every toast, every framed photo, every phone call. My brother, who had never once asked me how my work was going with the genuine curiosity you reserve for things you actually believe in. You never asked, I said. Not unkindly, just as a fact. He nodded. He looked like he was turning something over in his mind, slowly, like a stone he'd walked past 1,000 times, and was finally picking up. I found my aunt near the drink station and told her I was heading out. She hugged me for a long time without saying anything, which is one of the things I love about her. I drove home with the windows down, even though it was December and cold, because I needed the air. I thought about my mother's face in the moment Sophie said the words. I thought about how many times I had sat at their table and swallowed the smallness they assigned me. I thought about the card my aunt had sent me when the book came out. 3 paragraphs, specific. I thought about Sophie, who had read something I made, on a train, and missed her stop. I didn't feel victorious. That's not quite the word. I felt something quieter than that. Something close to the feeling at the end of a very long walk, when you finally sit down and realize your legs had been hurting the whole time, and also that you'd made it. 3 days later, Daniel called me. He talked for a long time. He said things I hadn't heard from him since we were children. Actual things. Specific things. The kind of things that are hard to say, because they require you to admit you were absent. He said he'd downloaded my book. He said he was only 50 pages in, but he already understood why Sophie had missed her stop. He said he was sorry. He said it more than once, in different ways, which told me he'd thought about it, rather than just deciding to say it. I listened. I didn't rush him. When he was done, I said, I know you didn't mean to, and I meant it. The people who hurt you the most are rarely the ones who chose to. They're the ones who simply never chose to look. I want to do better, he said. Okay, I said. Then do better. My parents did not call. I hadn't expected them to, not yet. There is a kind of pride that is so deep and so old it takes longer than 3 days to loosen. Maybe they would, eventually. Maybe they wouldn't. I had stopped making my own worth contingent on their verdict a long time ago. Or, I was working on it, which is the more honest way to say it. What I knew was this. I had built something real. I had built it quietly. Without their encouragement. Without their attention. Without their toast. I had built it in the margins of a family that had looked past me for 30 years. And it had been real the whole time, whether they saw it or not. Sophie's text came the next morning. It was longer than I expected, and in it she told me the specific scene that had made her miss her stop. It was a small scene, not one I'd thought of as the emotional center of the book, just a daughter sitting in her childhood kitchen at midnight, eating cereal, alone, and realizing for the first time that she was okay. That she had always been okay. That the people who had made her feel small were small themselves. And she did not have to carry their smallness anymore. I read her text twice. Then I opened my laptop. I started writing.